I'm deeply appreciating your theme, the courage to continue. And the questions it brings up for me are, where does the courage to continue come from? What does it mean to continue? To continue what? Continue how? Continue why? And what are the implications of the events of 2020 for what it means to lead in 2021 and beyond? And it can be useful when we're thinking about the future to reflect on the past. In 2020, the most commonly used search term in Google was why. Why is it called COVID-19? Why are schools closed? Why are people rioting? Why are the skies orange? It is as if we are all collectively asking, why is this happening to us? And that is what we do as humans. We are meaning-making machines, and we attempt to make meaning from all the events of our lives. And the meaning we make creates a story. And we each get to craft our own story. And I have a little trouble with my slides. The story will become our reality. So whatever meaning we make about 2020 for ourselves will become our reality. And we get to choose the story we make up about it and what it means for us, what it means for our leadership, and what it means going forward. The story I made up about 2020, it doesn't make me right, it's just my story, is that the purpose of 2020, the meaning of 2020, the why of 2020 was to send us all to our rooms, to encourage us to reflect, to allow distractions to fade away and amp up what's real in our lives, to awaken us to what is, to help us separate the signal from the noise, and an opportunity for us to turn inward toward the essence of our being, turn inward toward what matters most for us. So the drawing on this page is a result of my kindergarten-like art abilities. And I couldn't find an image that better reflected, so I just made one up. So the author and spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle talks about, our experience as humans as having a couple of dimensions. In the one dimension is this horizontal dimension, and it's the dimension of doing. And that dimension has a past, a present, and a future, a before, a during, and an after. It is that horizon space in which we give ourselves roles and identities, and we have ever-changing thoughts and emotions and experiences. The doing, this horizontal plane, is constantly changing and time-based. And then there's a dimension of our experience, a dimension of our essence that we have access to, that we can have access to at all times. And that's this vertical dimension of our being state. It is the timelessness of who we are. And while we can busy ourselves with our doing, we can miss our being and our connection with the divine. There's an ancient Indian story about a musk deer. And this musk deer wakes up on a beautiful spring day and smells this mysterious hypnotic fragrance in the air. And then this deer is so hypnotized by this fragrance that he just wants to go in search of it and find it and kind of capture it and hold it. And so he sets out and he searches the world over for the origin of this fragrance. He climbs icy mountains, he treks across desert sands, and he pads across boggy, humid areas. And he searches for the origin of this fragrance his whole life. And then finally, at the end of his life, he collapses, exhausted. And in collapsing, his tusk pierces his belly. And the fragrance he's been searching for so long fills the air. And the realization is that what he'd been searching for all along was emanating from within. So we can tend to spend our lives searching for what already lies within us. We can busy ourselves with doing at the expense of our being. So you might be thinking, wow, that's kind of deep for 9:30 on a Saturday morning. And what is she talking about? And like, that is out there. Like, and what does this have to do with the courage to continue? And that's like, all those things are absolutely fine. And we're going to anchor these points in the breakout. So the invitation for this breakout is for you to recall a time when you were really proud of yourself as a leader. And whether it's as part of a sports team or part of a class team or in a work environment, any situation in which you've needed to work with other people. So recall a time that you were really kind of proud of how you led, how you were being, and maybe a time that you didn't meet your expectations. So kind of take a bit and bring those two situations to mind. And what I'm going to ask you to discuss, and you'll have about 5-6 minutes in the breakout to talk about this. What's the difference in who you were being from when you were proud about how you led to when you weren't as proud? And then how did who you were being influence the results you got? What you did and the results you got. And so in other words, to make this less intangible. So I can recall a time when I did a TEDx conference and I had a speaker come that I really took a risk on, and it turned out to be the 4th most viewed TED Talk of all time. And who I was being in that is I was being trusting, I was being expansive, I was being curious. So like, that's a lot of what helped produce that outcome versus some other times where I'm feeling more closed, more risk averse, more contracted. Okay, so that's the invitation. Okay. Well, welcome back. I hope that gave some context for the conversation and helped you see how to internalize it a bit. So we're going to go into now what is leadership and put those comments around being and doing in a context of leadership. So what is leadership and how do you define it? Well, as you know, leadership's defined a lot of different ways by different people. And one of my favorite quotes about what leadership is by Dwight D. Eisenhower. And he said, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he, she, they wants to do it. So again, it's the art of getting someone else to do what you want done because they want to do it. So at first glance, that can feel like, well, that sounds a lot like manipulation, or you might think, well, God, it sounds like the tyranny of consensus. And there's another idea, another thread through that's possible. There's a concept in nonviolent communication called power with. And the idea, and it's power with versus power over. And power with is described by the founder of nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, as this way. The objective of a power with leader is never to get what we want. It's the development of a quality of connection that allows everyone's needs to get met. So the way in which a leader can have other people do what they want them to do because the people want to do it is because they have a quality of connection with everyone in their space that allows everyone's needs to get met, the leader's needs and whoever they're following's needs. So the key element of that description of power with relates to a quality of connection. So perhaps the single most important aspect of a leader and their ability to lead effectively is the quality of connection they have with the people they lead. So you might be thinking, awesome, like I'll have a supersized power with and a side of world peace and a tall drink of joy. How do we do all that? So yeah, how do we practically as leaders develop this kind of quality of connection? Well, it starts by tending to the quality of our own hearts, because the quality of our connection with others is directly a reflection of the quality of our connection with ourselves and our own hearts. And it's related to our ability to tap into the love that we are, tap into the being that we are. Rumi has this quote that says, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you've built against it." So all of us have barriers. All of us have means of protection that keep us, our small selves, safe, keep us from exposing our kind of soft, vulnerable underbellies. And those ways in which we armor up our hearts are also going to be the things that get in the way of our quality of connection with others. Love is the abundant nature of our being, and leadership is an act of love and an extension of a loving heart. Now, if you go into like a Fortune 500 company and say this, it's about P&L and it's about making money, it's about getting ahead, and it's about beating the other guy out. And how happy are those people? And how happy are the people working for them? And how sustainable is that? What I so appreciate about this work that you're doing is like you want it to be sustainable. So how does one lead sustainably? We lead sustainably by tapping into our own source of love and sharing that with the people we work with. So again, we're going to do a breakout, and so that you can take these ideas and work with them a bit. So think of someone you have had a challenge working with and reflect on your response to them. Maybe it's someone you worked in a group with who you kind of wasn't pulling their weight, and your reaction was to be angry and resentful and do their work for them. Whatever that is for you. Think of a time which you've had a challenge working with someone and reflect on how you, not just what you did, but how you felt and what you thought. So I'm going to imagine now what is it that that person was needing? Ask yourself, the person on the other side of your challenge, what were they needing? And how might you use this concept of power with, or how might have you use this conversation, this concept of power with this individual? So in other words, the idea of power with, the way in which we as leaders get other people to do what we want them to do because they want to do it, is because their needs are being met. And ours are too. So part of that is being able to be curious about what the the needs are of the people on our team, so that we can work through that with them and be honest about our needs as well, and do that in a way in which we're aligned. Okay. So you might be wondering, what does all this have to do with EQ and the EQ profile? So some of you have taken the EQ profile. Many of you have not taken it yet. It is the instrument that my company created and utilizes with a variety of people, with many, many leaders, to help them become aware of the barriers they have created in their hearts. And so what does the EQ profile really do? What does all this have to do, I'm talking about, with the EQ profile? Well, what the EQ profile, it reflects many, many, many things. And I won't go into all the detail. It's relatively complex. But at its essence, when you distill it all down, what it reflects are the barriers we've built up within ourselves against love. It reflects our habituated defensive way of being, particularly under stress. And it provides us with pointers to what can prevent us from developing the quality of connection we need to lead effectively. So it turns out that because of the way that we learn to be in relationships. So we learn to be in relationship from our earliest years, our baby years, our toddler years, and throughout our childhood. So we learn to be in relationship in our first relationships. And all of that happens at a time of which we have no explicit memory. We have only implicit memory of how we learn to be, survive, protect ourselves in relationship. And those implicit memories have shaped the feelings we feel, the ones we don't, the thoughts we have, the thoughts we suppress, the extent to which I can tune in to my thinking and my feelings and my desires, and the extent to which I can tune into someone else's. So we learn all of that at a very early age and don't know we've learned it. We just think that we see things just as it is, as our reality, or we see our patterns as the right way to be. So the intention of this instrument is to create some, hopefully, kind of permeability in the story we've told ourselves about other people, ourselves, and how things should be. And instead say, well, actually, there are other ways to be with stress. There are other ways to be with people who aren't doing what you want them to do. So what does all this mean? That simply leadership is the work of our lives. Leadership is how we come to know ourselves. Every time we are in a leadership position and there's some kind of rub with someone we're working with, that some kind of sticky part, right? That is the finger that points toward our own development. It's the finger that points to the ways in which we are building barriers and armoring up our heart. It points a finger to our quality of connection and where and how it might be suffering. So every leadership challenge we have of every kind is a finger pointing to our own development. And that can be, it's not just leadership challenges, frankly, every challenge we have. We're talking about leadership, but every challenge we have. You know, the Buddhists say that what's in the way is the way. Right. And so all these, like, whether it's the pandemic or isolation or not seeing family, or it's, you know, worry about vaccine or not, like all of those things, including whatever happens in a leadership context, all those stressors that feel at a time sticky and feel like they're obstacles and feel like they're in the way, they are the way. And our goal is to come to know them, come to understand them, come, more importantly, come to understand the story we've made up about them and interrogate that story within us and ensure that the story we're choosing is the story we're wanting. And it's an opportunity for us to become aware. Us to become aware of the barriers we built to shield our hearts, which, by the way, like has so many beneficial effects, because like leadership, particularly in a work context, is such a gift because we get to bump up with other people and they, you know, rub up against our sharp edges and we rub up against their sharp edges. And if we can do all that in holding a space of care and meeting each other's needs and loves, then we'll, just like two stones rolling over each other, we'll become smooth. And that's the opportunity we have in a work setting as a leader. In his book, Aware, Anthony DeMello says, what you are aware of, you are in control of. What you're not aware of is in control of you. You are always a slave to what you're not aware of. When you're aware of it, you're free from it. So the work of a leader is to constantly be introspecting, to constantly be making yourself aware of the quality of your connection and what prohibits you from having the quality of connection you need to have other people do what you want them to do because they want to do it because it meets their needs and yours. That's why the profile was created. And for those of you who haven't taken it, I'm excited for you to take it. It's to help leaders be aware of their habituated defenses, their barriers, and in the awareness of them, have the ability to see themselves, observe themselves in that pattern that does not serve them and serve their quality of connection, and be free of them, be free of those defenses. And it takes enormous courage. In fact, there may be nothing more courageous than turning a spotlight on ourselves, than turning the spotlight on our vulnerabilities, our patterns, our triggers, our defenses, and taking an honest look at the ways we keep others out of our hearts. So how do we continue to become aware of how we protect ourselves and stay divided from others? Well, we can tend to our own hearts in these variety of ways, and I'll drill down on each one. Meditation can help us tune into our being. Journaling can help us tune into our being. Taking refuge in nature, yoga, breath work, loving yourself. So if you don't practice meditation, start. The author and podcaster and entrepreneur Tim Ferriss has for years now interviewed hundreds of the most successful by any measure leaders in every field, from sports to entertainment to entrepreneurship to medicine to science. And they don't have much in common, but the one thing that is most in common with all of these incredibly successful people is they meditate. So if nothing else convinces you, maybe that does. And there's so much support out there for it now. Headspace is super easy. It's how I got started years ago. Calm. There's so many supports for getting started. And it's scientifically proven. This is not woo-woo. You know, mindfulness-based stress reduction has been out there for like 30 years now, and it's been scientifically tested to improve health and well-being and to reconnect with our being and to help us become aware. Essentially, meditation is a dual practice of us connecting with the nature of our being, and in that connection, see from the space of the being space, that timeless being space, being able to see the time-based horizontal space and become aware of our patterning, become aware of the thoughts and wants and feelings that don't serve us. Practice journaling. If you don't journal, start now. There are so many tools available to journal. I use the 5-minute journal because I do a lot of things and I don't want to spend a lot of time journaling, and I want to get right to it and get to the benefits. The 5-minute journal, you spend 3 minutes in the morning listing 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you want to do to have an amazing day, and kind of who you want to be being that day. And at the end of the day, you spend 2 minutes reflecting on what you did to have an amazing day and something that you could do to be different, something or a way of being that you want to be different. And it's it's a wonderful intention setting practice in the moment. And it's an excellent reflection process, because so much about awareness is reflection, and we don't spend enough time reflecting. Reflecting on the day, but also reflecting over time about the types of things you tend to journal. Practice yoga. There is some kind of yoga for every body and every ability. The Sanskrit for yoga is Sanskrit. In Sanskrit is called unity. So what does yoga do? It can help you reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your body. What shows up in terms of thought patterns on your mat shows up in the rest of your life. And that's a great awareness builder. Taking refuge in nature. Just as I believe part of the pandemic why was to have us turn inward, there was also a why on having us reconnect with nature. Because it has, as you experienced last night, it's taken us outside where we can be safe in nature. So spending time in nature as often as you can, reconnecting with the earth that runs and the energy that runs through all things. And this too is scientifically proven to enhance health and well-being. There's all kinds of research on grounding, getting your feet on the ground, all kinds of research on forest bathing, just walking in the forest and the benefits of that. Explore breath work. So this may or may not be something you're familiar with. There's all different types of breath work out there. There's holotropic breath work and many other modalities. And what breath work can do is reconnect you with yourself, reconnect you with your being state. It can produce a kind of psychedelic effect without the psychedelics. So become aware. It also helps you become aware of what separates you from yourself and others, and allows you this expansive place to explore new possibilities. And finally, like, love yourself. Like the ways in which you will tend to not love others. Let's say we judge, or let's say we're critical, or let's say whatever, have high expectations, are the ways in which we do that to ourselves. We are just doing to others what we're doing to ourselves. And so if we can love ourselves, then the quality of our connection will improve, because it will be a reflection of the way in which we love ourselves. How do you love yourself? Like metta meditation, which is also known as loving kindness meditation, is a great practice to have that be part of your routine. So, in closing, where does the courage to continue come from? It can come from connecting with our timeless divine being self. And what are the implications for leading in 2021 and beyond? Well, 2020 can be the wake-up call that we needed to reveal how divided we are across race, across politics, across gender, across economic situations and social circumstances. We are so divided, and all of that is a reflection of the ways in which we're divided from ourselves. So this work that you're doing, if you'll take on this tending to the quality of your heart, you will be taking it on for the world. You'll be doing your part to heal the divide that is so present in our world. And perhaps 2020 was about encouraging us to turn inward, to remember to love who we are, to remember the love that we are. And so to help us reconnect with ourselves, that allows us to create the quality of connection we need with others. So what does it mean to continue? Continue the work of our lives, turning inward, developing our awareness, tending our hearts, developing the quality of connection with ourselves and others. I'll end the presentation with this quote from Yogananda. The man who can reform himself can reform the world. I'll just close with this quote from the politician and activist John Lewis. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Study the path of others to make your way easier and more abundant. Lean toward the whispers of your own heart. Discover the universal truth and follow its dictates. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness. Hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. Choose confrontation wisely, but when it's your time, don't be afraid to stand up, speak out, and speak up against injustice. And if you follow your truth down the road to peace and the affirmation of love, if you shine like a beacon for all to see, then the poetry of all the great dreamers and philosophers is yours to manifest in a nation, a world community, and a beloved community that is finally at peace with itself.